Hey guys, this time we'll be talking about a really cool pick-up-and-play arcade game, Ultratron. Now this game came out on pretty much everything except the DS and 3DS, so I won't be listing all the systems it came out on. However, I will say this, once again, it's a dang shame that this is a digital-only release, and I hope that limited run games will pick it up. I made a topic on their forums about it and release it as a physical version on the PS Vita and PS4 as they usually do. However, I personally would love to own this game on the Vita as a physical copy because it's the perfect game to play on a handheld system and especially on a screen as beautiful as the original Vita screens. So as you can already see, Ultratron is a twin-stick shooter. Now this is a spiritual successor to a very old game. It's Robotron 2084, a game that is even older than I am. It's a year older than me, so back then Robotron came out on pretty much anything from home consoles to home computers, and of course the arcade version was the best. So Robotron takes the basic concept it's the other way around. It's Ultratron takes the basic concept of Robotron, where you play as a robot fighting other robots to save the human race, I guess, or whatever the story is now. Except in the original game, you'd rescue people. Now there are no humans left, I guess. Everything is destroyed. It's just robots fighting other robots. And this time around, they implemented a upgrade system. So as you play and as you destroy enemies, you collect coins, which are currency used for certain upgrades, and there's quite a lot of upgrades that, surprisingly enough, at first I didn't realize this, but you need to be very careful how you upgrade your characters so that they match your playstyle best. Unfortunately, I don't have as much footage of all these as I'd like to. I lost a bunch of it, and a whole bunch of footage ended up just recording as black screen, so that happened, but there should be enough to show you everything that you need to see and know about the game. Either way, Robotron is a very simple game. It's a very easy to understand concept. All you have to do is move with the left stick on your controller and aim and shoot with the right one, as it normally works in twin-stick shooters. There's also keyboard and mouse controls. I don't know. I tried playing a game like that, but it just didn't feel right to me, so I went back to using a controller. So the basic concept is very simple. However, once you get into the game, you have to be very careful how you upgrade your robot, how you spend your money, because you might, if you're not good at the game, you will end up spending all your money on extra lives, or shields as they're called here, and you won't have enough for important upgrades that you actually need in order to advance, because this game starts out easy, but it gets very challenging very quickly, and I must admit it has a very flawed save system. So the save system makes it so that I don't know how to even explain the save system. It's a little weird. I don't think I even understand it properly. What happens is, with every boss you defeat, the game creates a checkpoint. So basically, for every new world, if you can call them that. At this checkpoint, whatever you have on you at the moment, number of lives, upgrades, bombs, whatever else you have, is saved. So if you happen to be in a sorry state where you have no lives, no extra bombs, no money left, no nothing, the game will save that and start you off in the next level as such, so making it very difficult or downright impossible for you to advance if you are in a bad state. So the next time you load up your game or continue where you died, it's going to go back to that miserable state you were in, and you'll just die again, making you, or rather forcing you, to go back to a previous checkpoint and start from there. The problem with this is that the game saves your character at a checkpoint as it was at that given time. So it doesn't save your upgrades, your currency, none of that. It doesn't save it globally. It saves it from checkpoint to checkpoint, meaning that you have to go back to a previous checkpoint and hope that you are in a better state there so you can continue your game from that point, which is understandable given that this is an arcade game. However, this is something that you need to keep in mind when you want to replay the game from the first level, because if you happen to do worse, once you reach the point where the game saves, it will save your progress as such and overwrite your previous save, making it so that your current save is the checkpoint from which you can continue. And the game doesn't care whether you do better or worse, so you can easily overwrite your good progress, your good checkpoints with something not as good. So this is something to keep in mind when playing the game and wanting to replay it from the first level. We have to understand one thing. Ultratron is primarily an arcade game, and arcade games didn't have saves and such back in the day. They would only save the high score and that was it. So it's understandable why the game does this. Basically, what you have here is a save system that lets you play from start to finish if you can, without having to do it in one sitting, and that's all there is to this save system. And this save system is exactly why you need to be very careful how you upgrade your character and what you spend your money on. You see guys, Ultratron has very deep mechanics for a simple arcade game. It's something I did not expect when I initially picked this game up. Not only can you upgrade the main robot you control, but you can also upgrade and, to an extent, modify the behavior of its assistant robots. And there are several types of different assistant robots. They're called pets, and then you have drones and whatnot that you need to carefully choose when upgrading, because you probably won't have enough currency to unlock them all, so you need to be careful which ones you unlock and which ones you upgrade in order for them to fit into your gameplay style. And for you to know this, you need to play the game several times, get a good feel of the game, understand what your playstyle is like, and accordingly choose the assistant robots that you want. Now, there are two types of, as far as I'm aware, of assistant robots. There are these tiny little drones, they're pets, called pets. They follow you around, and if they get hit, they get stunned, so you need to go to them and pick them back up. Otherwise, they won't shoot, they won't do what they need to do. And there are these stationary big robots that sort of function like turrets, which shoot in the same direction you do, but due to their different placement, their shots land in different areas of the playfield. So strategically placing these turret robots around the level and being mindful of the fact that they get shot and they can die is key to being successful in the game, especially in later levels when things get a little too hectic and difficult. Speaking of difficulty, the game gets very difficult later on, and there's this risk versus reward gameplay where you need to pick up the coins enemies drop very quickly because they will disappear. And in order to do that, you often have to get close to other enemies, increasing your chances of dying. Everything that isn't coins, your friendly robots, or yourself is out to kill you. You constantly get shot at, enemies try to slam into you, there's all sorts of things, there are bombs that come up on screen which you can shoot to have them explode, and if you're too close to them, you will get damaged as well. So there's a lot to be mindful of in this game. However, as you play, you pick up all sorts of temporary power-ups. Some of these power-ups add more support robots. Others affect the way the player collects coins. And then we have power-ups that, of course, modify the weapon's behavior or upgrade your weapon temporarily. There are several things to note about power-ups. For starters, the weapon modifying power-ups stack. Also, power-ups do not disappear in the playfield if you don't pick them up immediately, unlike coins. And there's one more very interesting thing about the weapon modifying power-ups is that once they drop on your playfield, if you shoot at the power-ups, you can see exactly what they do. They pick up your bullets and they convert them to whatever modifier they carry in them. So what you can do is, before picking them up, you can just leave them lying there, and if you're lucky enough to be able to strategically place a bunch of these weapon modifying power-ups in a way so that power-ups carry over between levels, so it's a good idea to pick them all up when you really find yourself in a bind or during a boss battle. As I said, this game has a whole bunch of interesting gameplay mechanics, and part of being successful in combat is knowing when to pick up your power-ups and when to utilize their abilities outside in the playfield itself without picking them up. And some of them are absolutely awesome. You have these weapons that bounce off the walls of the playfield, and if you pick up the right power-ups, you can end up filling the entire screen with bullets, similar to what you'd see in a bullet hell shmup, except this time around you're the one doing all the bullet helling, and it just looks amazing. Now, speaking of graphics and the game's looks, Ultratron has a very good visual style. It's an interesting blend of modern and retro 8-bit visuals that somehow manages to create the illusion that you're looking down at an old arcade cabinet, right down to the picture or image distortion that happens on bad CRT monitors. Now, I will say this. I think the use of some of the modern effects is out of place. However, for the most part, the game looks very, very nice. It has a certain depth to it that gives it that illusion that you are actually looking at an old arcade cabinet. Now, back in the day, this is something that most of you older viewers probably remember, and younger viewers can't even imagine it. Certain arcades had sort of like mirrors in them, and the image would be projected onto the mirror, and it gave it a certain level of depth, something that, I don't know, it made the games look like they were actual objects moving inside the arcade cabinet instead of you looking at a screen. There was also another thing that some arcades did, and it was purely by accident. Now, lots of modern games that are trying to look retro use this sort of neon look, and to an extent, Ultratron uses it as well. So what would happen is, back in the day, especially, in big arcades where the cabinets weren't maintained properly, the protective glass of some arcade cabinets would get all smudged up or greasy or just plain dirty. And that would give the games this sort of neon glow, because often very old arcade games, they'd have black backgrounds and brightly colored sprites, or they would be in black and white or monochrome, whatever. And thanks to the fact that they weren't kept properly, they weren't cleaned properly, there would be this sort of blur all over the screen, rather the protective glass, and it gave them this almost neon kind of glow, which was, to me at least, very fascinating back in the day. And some of these modern retro games actually managed to capture that quite nicely. In fact, Ultratron did this better in its very first version, back when Xbox Live started with indie games. Now, I got the game back then, I absolutely loved it. I went so far as to lay the monitor down on the table so that I would simulate sort of a cocktail arcade cabinet feel for Ultratron and the first Pac-Man CE that came out back then, and Geometry Wars 2. I absolutely loved playing that stuff. If I can find a video of this, I will edit it in. If I cannot, well, just imagine what it looked like. It was good times. So Ultratron, even today, looks great. It has many improvements over its iteration on Xbox Live Arcade. However, its visuals are not without fault. I feel that at times the enemies are a little difficult to see, and especially to a visually impaired person such as myself, so I often end up bumping into them and losing all my lives, which, well, it ain't pretty, but it happens. You gotta live with it. However, Ultratron does something very, very good with its visual style, or rather layout, that I appreciate greatly. You see, ever since the shift to widescreen resolutions, I've had a problem being able to see the entire screen, making horizontal shmups and other, horizontal platformers and such a little more difficult to play, because I only use my left eye to look at a screen. So Ultratron, with its layout, seems to focus its playfield in a way so that I can easily see the entire playfield with my good eye, and I really greatly appreciate that. Otherwise, I'd have to maybe switch to a non-widescreen resolution, which would be, an issue when it comes to recording, and overall it could break the game. It breaks certain games. So that's something I really appreciate about this particular game. So guys, as you can see, I like Ultratron a lot, and I highly recommend it to anyone who wants a quick, easy to pick up and play game if they're busy with work or whatever they're doing and need something for relaxation to play for a few minutes. Then Ultratron is definitely the game to pick up, especially if you have a PS Vita, because this is the perfect handheld game. in my opinion. Hope you all enjoy the game. Hope you all give it a chance, and well, we'll talk about more pick up and play games in future videos.